One, discussion five. This is Kevin Cronin,
And Greg Allen.
and so yeah, let's just jump right into the um, creative responses. So what did I do mine on? I did like a sort of back and forth of like the positive aspects and the negative aspects of sort of like the technological advancements that people basically have on their phones now. Um, so like incorporated like a podcast I was listening to a couple of days ago. But so for the negative aspects, I was kind of, hitting on all the generic um, sort of things that people talk about how like, people aren't really engaged in the real world because they're looking down at their phone. Um, and how that kind of like messes with a person's mind, sort of, I guess, like I don't remember exactly which aspect of the brain it sort of plays around with, but like it makes like it more difficult for people to like engage in eye contact with like their peers and like older individuals. Um, and that was kind of what I did in terms of the negative aspect. The positive aspect, I talked a little bit about how like I got from an article that was talking about how the introduction of like sort of technological advancements in a classroom setting has basically positive attributes that like kind of showed themselves in tests and things like that, um, and also how incorporating that into a classroom has the capacity to get students engaged in it, because I mean it is a pretty important aspect of contemporary life now. Like, I mean, people send emails from their phone, and people, like can send copies of documents and things like that from their phone. So it's good to sort of like get people used to the framework of it and everything. And the incorporation of the podcast I was listening to was what was it called? It's like a podcast called Philosophize This, which is like 20-minute clips of a guy talking about like philosophical concepts. And I was listening to one. It was about simulacra, which is like, uh, I mean, basically what he kind of talks about is how the like movie version of the idea is the Matrix, where people are living this life, and they go to work, they do all of the stuff that people do, and then they go home, and just like that's the day in day out grind kind of a thing. But as he kind of goes deeper into it, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but I mean, he gets taken out of the Matrix, and so the whole thing is basically just like a simulation that people are in to produce energy. But I was kind of tying that back to like the concept of how like people kind of tend to create like an identity for themselves through like the things that they buy, like the outward kind of appearance of themselves. And I kind of tied it back into one of the concepts from one of the videos about like Instagram influencers, and how like the Instagram influencers are given like say like Adidas or something like that, and then people all see them in it, so they're basically marketing for Adidas. And that was kind of like how that all tied back into the podcast I was listening to. um, that was basically my creative response.
Yeah, it's interesting because, on one level, people say that social media and technology takes us away from, that communication and interaction with others, but on another level, like it really enhances the communication and interaction. It's just on a technological level instead of a personal face-to-face level. So yeah, that's interesting. Um, my creative response was geared towards looking at social media and how it affects adolescents and teens and young adults on a political spectrum. So looking primarily at the 2016 presidential election and um, how much of an influence social media had on that election, from the sense that voters and the general American public were tweeting out their opinions and posting their opinions on Facebook, and this was really the first time that people publicized their political opinions. I know personally, like I know now way more about people's beliefs than I did ever before, just because of what they post on Facebook and social media. And then not just the general public, but the candidates that were running themselves going on social media, and the idea of free promotion for their own campaign. You can reach millions and millions of people over social media uh, for no cost at all. You tweet out a campaign poster or your logo, and now tons of people are seeing that, instead of having to spend money for advertisements and things like that, which they obviously still did. But they're able to reach a lot more people through social media. So that was pretty much what I wrote about for my creative response.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's sort of like what you were saying about how they still did the ad campaigns and stuff. That kind of I guess that's kind of like directed towards like an older audience, whereas the social media aspect is kind of directed towards like a younger audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think basically what we have just been talking about kind of ties directly into question two, which is how does the commercialization affect youth development?
Yeah. So I kind of took this question as, with everything that we see in advertisements and things like that, how does that um, affect youth? And basically, what I took from that is that companies look for areas where they can exploit the younger people, and a lot of what was in the essay was saying how younger people don't always recognize the real purpose of advertising, and they mistake the actors for real people. So, for example, if we see a commercial where somebody's going on and on about how great um, a product is, let's say a toothbrush, uh, you know, we don't always see that that person is probably getting paid to talk positively about that toothbrush. We just think, oh wow, the person really loves the toothbrush. I bet it works. And companies have done research to find, the vulnerabilities of adolescents, and they come up with ways of how they can specifically target the youth to kind of make them buy into the product. And another part of the essay that I thought was interesting was when it was talking about how companies make ads targeted to impact children with the hope of children nagging their parents for the product. And there was some stat in there about X amount of products are bought by parents simply because their children were bugging them to buy it because they saw a commercial on TV. So even if it's an adult product, the people making the ads and the people in the marketing department are doing their best to make those ads appeal to children. So we could be talking about like a Cheerios commercial, not that attractive of a cereal for for a younger child. But if they can make that commercial appeal to children, then the children will ask their parents to buy Cheerios at the store. And then that creates this idea that that child will become a long term customer, a loyal customer for a longer duration of time if they start at a younger age. So I think, using these kind of manipulative tactics, companies are targeting children in their advertisements and really exploiting the younger brain.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like just kind of continuing off of that, um, it's like what you just said. Kids or adolescents don't even recognize that the people in the ads aren't real people. Well, then that kind of like blends into the social media element of it, because you have like those influencers that I was talking about earlier, and that they showed in one of those videos, the little blonde kid um, who was like eating the Taco Bell thing,
Mhm.
like that, like that kid gets Taco Bell and shows himself eating the Taco Bell. He's a real person living his real life, but at the same time he's also influencing however many millions of followers that he has, and then
Right.
that in turn is like kind of meshed together with like actual ads where the kids don't notice that it's not a real person, it's an actor. Whereas this guy is an actual real person, but he's like standing in as an actor almost. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like blurring the line of like what's real and what's not real. So that could potentially have some negative effects on the adolescent mind. Um, and also tying back into the toothbrush and the podcast thing, like a lot of the podcasts I listen to, the hosts of the actual podcast will have like ads where they have to try and sell you
Yeah.
something because they're all free podcasts. And one of the big sort of sponsors that they have is a thing called Quip, and it's like an electronic toothbrush. So it's like you're going and listening to something to like alleviate your boredom or like try and learn something, and they're like almost subconsciously selling you something.
Yeah, and the way that they say it, it sounds like natural.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it seems like it's almost part of the podcast, but they're getting paid a decent amount of money to say it.
yep. So yeah, I mean, I would say like yeah, just the like the blurring of that line is potentially like detrimental to like the adolescent brain developing, just because from the past couple of weeks we've been learning how much activity goes on in the brain at that time. So if you don't like have a I guess like a mechanism that's kind of saying like this is the real world and this is advertisement or something that is not real, like that could potentially screw you up later on.
Yeah, for sure. So the next question was about like the vulnerability, and I think it kind of ties in with the first question where advertisers and companies are trying to exploit vulnerabilities. And one of the vulnerabilities that I thought was really interesting was about the video games, and how in that one video they showed the army was recruiting people to go to war based off of Call of Duty. They would bring them into the recruiting center and have them play the video game for who knows how long. And then they would say, "So, are you interested in joining the army?" And, again, with the idea of real versus fake, obviously a video game is nothing compared to what real combat is. And younger people don't always realize that. So it's kind of this glorified image of what happens.
Hmm.
And then, they end up accepting the offer and end up going to go into the army. Another one with video games that in the essay it was talking about the sexualization of women and how on video game covers there's women who are exposed, or in the games themselves the images of women are highly sexualized, and it was saying that people who see that become more tolerant to like sexual harassment. So it's kind of this dangerous slippery slope with video games. Again, with the idea of real versus fake, it kind of creates this fake world that people perceive to be the actual world.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, going back to the army or the military aspect of it, like the real versus fake thing becomes even more like heightened because you have these kids going into the recruiting center playing the video game, but then it showed like the actual people who were like flying drones, and like that almost seemed like it was a video game. So it's like what is real and what isn't real in this anymore. It's kind of like, and then it was talking about like the sort of like psychological stress that those guys would have because they go to work, they sit there for 8 hours in a jumpsuit like they're actually flying a plane. They're like following people around, and then the one dude blew up the other guy, and then literally like 3 hours later he's home with his family. So it's like there's absolutely no like physical danger to him in that sense, but he still has to sort of deal with like the sort of like strain of knowing that he like did military action and took another human life and stuff, but then goes home to his family. Yeah, so that was kind of wild. So I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, like I think just in terms of like how social media is kind of going, and like in terms of like the sexting and stuff, just like these kids are living in that world like so often and like so much, and like that also ties back into that like culture thing where like people want to get as many likes as they can, so like they almost objectify themselves in order to get like a certain amount of likes. Because I mean you see it all over the place. You see like models on Instagram who are like posing half naked and putting photos up so they can get like however many likes, and then you have like sports athletes who are posing like with no shirt on and stuff like that. So it's like they're turning themselves into an object almost.
Yeah.
And like I think doing that to yourself is obviously not going to be good for your mental health, because I mean like what happens when you get older and you realize that there's like more to life than being young and fit and attractive and stuff. So I mean, yeah, I don't think that that's going to have terribly good psychological aspects on a person's mind. So yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm just too much of an old timer.
No, I mean it makes sense. Like if we're so consumed by this, the number that's next to a picture that we post, we're gonna figure out what kind of picture gets the highest number. And like you said, it probably isn't very healthy for the mental state. So I mean, while we're on the topic of social media, I kind of just wanted to touch on multitasking because it was a decently large part of the essay and one of the documentaries that we had to watch. So I thought it was interesting how they said, young people think that they're way better at multitasking than they actually are. in the sense that, we think that we're picking up on everything that a professor is saying while we're also scrolling through Twitter, but really we're not. I know personally, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and then I pull out my phone and start reading a text message, I physically can not do both. I do not understand what the person just said to me. Like, I can hear them talking, but I'm not actually absorbing the information. And then, as far as schools go, with technology and having laptops and phones in class, chances are you're not picking up on what a teacher or professor is saying if you have your computer on or open. And even if you have a Microsoft document open and you're taking notes, there's so many other things on that computer that can cause a distraction. A lot of people have their text messages linked to their computer, so you could be taking notes and then all of a sudden, ding, a text message pops up in the corner, so you just look for a second. Next thing you know, you've missed 5 minutes of what was going on in the class. So I think for teachers and professors, it can be difficult, to try to walk that line of, where do you draw boundaries of how often kids can use computers in class and things like that. I know in the school that I substitute at, every single student has their own laptop provided to them by the school. That was a new thing within the past couple of years. And, pretty much like while they're in class, they're not allowed to be on it unless, there's like a lesson or something that's posted online or things like that. But if the teacher is talking, it's supposed to be closed. So, figuring out how often those should be used during class time is something that could be a challenge. But, I think it can also be positive. There's things out there like Google Classroom, so you can basically have your entire classroom set online where you can post assignments and things like that. So I think it can be beneficial, but like I was saying before, you have to be able to walk that line.
There are also things like Blackboard Collaborate, right?
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just honestly, I feel like I'm like an old timey stickler because I'm like if I try and do multiple things at one time, like if I were to try and have a conversation with you and look at a text message, I would just get annoyed at everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of don't necessarily like the idea, but at the same time, I know it is like the way that the world has gone. So I mean, I feel like you can't really take that away from them. Like you have to sort of teach them how to use it. But it's just like there has to be some kind of way to make them use it properly,
Right.
as opposed to just jumping from one thing to another without actually paying attention to the information that's being taught to them. So I don't know. It's I think that's something for a better mind than mine.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with multitasking too is like people feel so busy all the time that they feel like they have to be doing so many things at once. So there's almost this like pressure to multitask, and in reality, that's not helping anything. So I
Well,
thought it's the interesting part of the things we read and watched.
I feel like we actually just sort of answered one of my questions. So yeah, my question was, what is your opinion on the advances in technology, and do you think it helps or hinders adolescence? So I feel like we kind of just answered that one.
Yeah, through our conversations. Yeah, definitely. So I guess I'll ask one of my questions now, which is how can teachers use media and technology positively in the classroom? And basically what I said, I kind of just touched on. There are things out there like Google Classroom where you can set it up so that kids can turn in assignments on there. You can leave like worksheets and things for kids to do if the teacher isn't going to be there. I know so many times when I sub now, I go in and, written on the whiteboard is just assignment on Google Classroom. So they just log on to their laptops and get going on the assignment. And then my job is to walk around and make sure that they're not being distracted by other things on their laptop.
Mhm.
So I think there are some positives in that sense. And then as far as other technologies, just being able to show kids videos now, or do a Google search in the middle of a classroom, or pull up different pictures, or historical things, sorts of on the internet that teachers can use to their advantage while teaching. Oh, and then one thing I also wanted to talk about was, now a lot of teachers are coaching as well. And I know a lot of coaches have created, Twitter pages for their sports teams, and it's a way to interact with other teams and print media or digital media. So it's a really interactive thing that coaches can use, which is kind of a goes hand in hand with teaching.
Yeah. See, I would say I guess my sort of take on that would be hang on, I just lost my train of thought. I didn't even start going and I lost it already. How did that happen? Oh right, yeah. So I would say like in a sense, I mean I have a I don't want to say I have a pessimistic view of technology, but it's just I think it's one, it is addictive. Um, and the issue with it's like too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing kind of a thing. Oh, that's the juice. Awesome. Um, but I guess in the classroom, if you could if they all have their own laptop or iPad or whatever it is, maybe try and make a way that only certain apps or programs could be run on it. Like if they tried to open Instagram or something like that, they wouldn't be
Right,
able
it's
to.
blocked. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or they wouldn't even be able to upload it onto the thing. Like the only thing that would be on there would be educational material. I think that would potentially be a way to um, get them used to the technology without them sort of straying from it.
Using it. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't. I'm not a big tech guy though, so I don't know how you would actually do that. Because in that one video where they incorporated laptops in all of the classrooms and stuff, the kids, because they are so tech savvy, would be able to sort of bypass those blocks. What do they call them again? Digital natives. Yeah, that's it. Um, yeah, so I mean, I feel like you would almost have to have multiple tech people employed by the school just to make sure that that kind of stuff didn't happen.
Yeah, where I am right now, they actually do have a lot of blocks. Pretty much all social media is blocked. Certain videos on YouTube are blocked, so kids can't just go on YouTube and watch whatever.
They have to watch educational stuff.
Yeah, and it's actually blocked on the the Wi-Fi.
Oh,
So
okay.
so even if I am on the school's Wi-Fi, if I try to go onto Instagram or Twitter, it just won't load. So it is interesting, and it's interesting too that you brought up the fact that having tech people on staff. Yeah, it's definitely a requirement. So yeah, something I didn't think about. And then, so kind of on the flip side, not looking from a teacher perspective, but from a student perspective, how has living in the digital age helped you as a student, and how has it hurt you?
Well, I mean, like when I was graduating from high school, it was 2006. So like at that point, we still had flip phones. They didn't like come, I don't think they came out with the first iPhone yet.
Hmm.
I don't even know when they came out with the first iPhone. But I mean, I didn't get a cell phone until I was like 18. Um, and then uh, I mean, I don't necessarily know how it's hurt me, but like it's helped me definitely because like the technological elements have made sort of learning certain things easier. Like I was dismal at doing like works cited pages when I first went to college, but when I came back to college, we had all of these like Easy Bib and
Yep.
like you could go on Google and just like search how to find it. So
Yeah, it makes it much easier.
yeah, exactly. I mean, like the fact that like it is pretty amazing the fact that you can go on Google, type in some question, and within seconds you have an answer. But like I mean I like the fact that you can do that because like say if you don't know a word or something, like if you see a word, you can just you don't have to go to a thesaurus or a dictionary or whatever.
Right. You just type it in.
Exactly. It's like you have a handheld dictionary wherever you go. But at the same time, it's also like in some senses that's like almost externalizing our memories. Like you don't need to remember stuff because you can just look it up on Google.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. I got a weird love hate relationship with technology.
So I would say for me, it's helped a lot in the research department. My parents talk a lot about how they would have to, use encyclopedias and go to libraries and check out books and actually do a lot of reading. Whereas now you can just go to your school's library database online, and with a few keywords, you can narrow down your search. And then even when you get to the article, you can search for specific words that you might be looking for, and it'll really narrow down what you actually have to read to to do the research. So I think research has become way easier. Um, and then just being able to access videos and articles is obviously easier. Before computers, you would have to, you know, look at newspapers and go back to newspaper files and thumb through, thousands and thousands of pages. Um, I did one of my professors in my undergrad was writing a book, so I helped him out with some of the research for it, and he was looking at, civil rights things from like the 50s and 60s. So we went to the library, and the name of the machine is blanking on me, but there's literally like these little file discs
Oh,
of,
with the newspapers.
yeah, with the newspapers, and you literally by hand scroll through, and it's like a digital projection of the pages. So me
Hmm.
and my friend were in the library for like 5 hours looking for one article, and we ultimately found it. But if it were an article written in 2016, I'd be able to find it in 5 seconds by typing in, a few keywords and the author's name.
Well, hey,
So
we could look up the name of that machine on our phone.
there you go, and we could have an answer within seconds. Um, I also think the idea of communicating with classmates is easier. A lot of times there's group projects assigned, and just being able to start a group text message now or a group email is way easier than having to make a plan after your class for a Friday night and then actually relying on people to show up at that meeting spot. Now you can just send out a group text. And then I think it's
Also,
also, go ahead.
sorry, we wouldn't be able to be taking this online class if it wasn't
Exactly.
for technology.
Exactly. So I think it's helped in that way. And then just overall, like organizing and planning has become easier. We can stash all of our files on the computer in separate folders based off of the classes that we're in, instead of having, 1,000 pieces of paper just floating around in a binder or a folder. And then as far as how it's hurt me, I would just say, the distractions. If I'm on my computer typing something up, and my phone goes off, next thing you know, I'm distracted. So I would say that it's hurt me in that department. And sometimes the technology doesn't always work. Your Wi-Fi could be down when you have to post an assignment online, or like we experienced that one time, you're halfway through your video conference and then your words are slurred and you can't see the other person. So sometimes the technology fails us, and that makes things a little more difficult. But I would say in general, it's helped me as a student much more than it's hurt me.
I was about to say that sound like a technological failure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, I guess let's just go into my last question, which kind of ties into what we were just talking about.
Yeah, it seems all related here.
Yeah. What types of experiences have you had with social media, and how can you use those experiences in the class?
Yeah, so social media is interesting. It's kind of is what you make of it, based off of who you decide to follow. So I could go on to Twitter and I could follow New York Times, CNN, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and I could create this external political world, that I'm now very tapped into. Or I could follow ESPN, the New York Jets, the Boston Celtics, um, Albert Pujols, and Steph Curry, and now all of a sudden I've created this athletic world for myself that I'm very tapped into. So, you know, or you could go on and follow all your friends and just, keep up with what they're doing. So I always think that social media kind of is what you make of it based off of who you decide to follow. So my personal experience, I follow mostly my friends, but once I got into college, I started following um, more news sources and more political things, to try to stay in tune and in touch with the news and what's going on in the world. And then as far as how I can bring that into the classroom, you know, just and I know one of the history teachers does this with, they do like a current events segment of class where, like, for the first 5 or 10 minutes of every class, he kind of just pulls up Twitter and goes to different news outlets' Twitter sites and just sees, what those news outlets are tweeting about. What stories are they posting? What videos are they posting? So it's literally current events to the second, to the minute, in that classroom that the students can then have conversations and debates about. So I think that's a really useful use of the technology and the social media.
Yeah. I mean, for my own thing, I mean, I don't really use much of it. Like, I mean, I have an Instagram, but that's primarily it, and pretty much all I really do on it is like post videos, or like videos of like concerts or like sporting events that I go to, or like random pieces of art that I see, or like landscape shots or something. And you don't really get a lot of like likes on those. So I don't really go on it terribly often. So I don't have much of an experience, but I guess like in that sense, I would just be like the sort of crazed old hermit in the classroom, and just like, because I mean it is kind of terrifying. Because I mean it is a drug. It's definitely a drug.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
when you get likes, you get like a hip like the hit of dopamine, and then you have to get more, and like it never really adds up to what you sort of like need or want. Um, and I mean, like I hate to say it, but like it I feel like in some ways, if you go on it too much, it could potentially lead to actual drug use. Because like I mean like just the concept of like getting that dopamine kick, and like obviously they're adolescents and they're going to like try stuff because that's like the risk taking behavior. Um, and I think that it could potentially be like a gateway. So I'm like pretty terrified of that. Uh, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't like, oh, don't go on the social media, kids, because like obviously they would want to do it more. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just like it scares the crap out of me, man.
Yeah, for sure.
In a sense, I mean, I'm obviously not like terrified of it, but yeah. See, now I'm just getting into a weird sort of tangent, so I'm gonna stop now.
Yeah, well, but I can see, where that comes from, and I think it's definitely related. So, interesting point. All right, so if you have any closing thoughts, that about does it, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right, so sounds good.
All right, signing off.